moon.
Hello, if you could start us off with your name and where you're from.
Sure, no worries. Yeah, so my name's Owen Evans. I'm from currently Ottawa, Canada, and you can find me on the Legion Discord under the handle Sethamath.
Sethamath, I have to ask about that. What is
Yeah,
this name? The origin?
the origin of the name, it is a name
Yeah.
I came up with when I was like, I don't know, 16 and started playing
Okay.
World of Warcraft back
Oh,
in the day.
okay.
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah, yeah. So I've just kind of kept it as my online handles ever since. So
And is it
that's
like it
all there
the
is to it.
the name, like the first name Seth and then like mathematics, or is it
No,
just like
nothing,
Sethamath?
nothing like that. Just Sethemith. It just like
Okay.
clicked the random generate when I created the Blood Elf Dream Burning Crusade and just
Uh-huh.
kept going through it. And I was like, oh, this kind of looks it. Like it kind of works. It was something longer in my
Sealed your fate
control,
for a couple
and I was just like, you
decades.
know what, this will work. And then you start playing with that
Yeah.
character name, and then you get recognized for it, and you're like, ah, damn it.
Yep.
And then it just kind of became a thing. And I haven't shaken it. It's just been like, you know what? It works.
It's
Typically, you
solid.
know when you
Yeah.
sign up for things and like sometimes usernames get taken? This one's
Uh-huh.
never taken. So it works.
Perfect.
That's yeah, yeah. There's no deeper meaning there. As much as I
All
wish there
right.
was.
All
There's
right. I
probably
had to
good.
ask. I had to ask.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's good. Yeah.
Okay. Well, back to Legion. You won one of the World's Open qualifiers, correct?
Yes, I won the Battle for Quebec Open qualifier. So that was the second one up in Canada, in Eastern Canada, that was run in Quebec. And yeah, it was a good time.
Very nice. And you're going to be going to Adepticon this month?
I will be traveling to Adepticon to play. I'm looking forward to it. There's a bunch of other local guys earned invites at different events, store
Nice.
championships, or at the World Open qualifier itself. So I'm excited to go as a group, and it'll be a
Yeah,
good time.
yeah. Do you know what event or what list and faction you're going to be playing?
So if I don't waffle to the last minute, I will probably play the same thing I played at the World Open qualifier, which was a Echo-based defenders list.
Oh,
Three veterans, three Mark IIs, two FDs, Leia, Han, and Chewie. Very much a rebel gun line that caught a lot of people by surprise because it
yeah.
hasn't been seen a lot.
That's 11 acts
Um,
then? No
11
tons,
activations. Yeah. No tons, no tons.
five
No, I
standbys.
five
Interesting.
standbys. Yeah, five standbys. It plays a lot different than I normally play. If I go from tradition, I've been playing Rogue One ever since it was possible to play Rogue One stuff. That's my bread and butter Rebels that I really enjoy to play, and
Yeah.
it kind of goes to more like how I like to play Legion. This was an exercise in trying something different, and it worked, and it seems to catch a lot of people by surprise because they're not used to seeing it this variation, right? They're used to the four tons. They're used to like
Okay.
Luke three tons. They're not as used to this like just
Yeah.
more defensive gun line with a battle deck built to work with itself in that like static way.
Okay. Have you how have you felt on the tables you've played on? Have you felt that like your FDs have had enough vision to be relevant?
Yeah. So I played on a wide variety of tables, and the generally speaking, two FDs is where you can you'll find a good placement for one and a reasonable for a second.
Okay.
I've done some testing. When you take three or four FDs, it can't be done. It's not reliable. Like you
Yeah.
walk up to a dream table, you put down four FDs, and you're like, great, I won this game on deployment. And then you go into the next game and you lose instantly on deployment because you got two FDs, so like 120-ish points. That can't
Yeah.
do anything, and there's nothing you can do. So I found two is the sweet spot on most
Okay.
tables.
Okay. Nice. Well, hopefully you roll some pretty good tables at Adepticon. Uh,
That's the hope. No, nothing too dense that a vehicle can't fit on it, right? Because that's
right.
the way that I kind of treat FDs is like they're like a tank. If the tank can't drive it, the FD won't be able to shoot through it. So
Right. Right.
yeah.
Okay. So with this list, what do you see are the main strengths of it?
So the main strength of it is for this list in particular is just the sheer amount of dice that it tosses in the Rebel faction. It's also surprisingly durable due to. I'll out myself out here and just kind of say it. I think Chewbacca is the best unit in the Rebel faction by far. And purely just because he supports all the glass cannon units and
Yeah,
making them
yeah.
survive. That's it. Like
Stems the
straight up
attrition.
stems the attrition so that your good dice get to stay at a good healthy number so that you
Hmm.
can punch your opponent down. That's kind of the strength of it. The other major strength of it is the just the long you have range on most lists. Like you either punch with more dice at range 4 or even range 5 than they do, even if it's a bit more static. That everyone is walking into your gun line if they want to punch you with their full dice pool, with the
Okay.
small exception of experimental droids. I'm
Right.
that might be a
Yeah.
leading comment,
Yeah, those
but
are
yeah,
those can be nasty. Fortunately, like at least those the experimental droids, they rely on the BXs that get shredded by Han. So
if you
once
can
if they
get
don't have
through the
shields,
shields,
yeah,
yeah,
and once
and
those
and
shields are
if Han
down,
doesn't fall over like that,
ah,
right?
yeah,
Like
he
if your
can.
opponent, yeah, or they just charge Han with the unit because Han has to get to range 2 to get in, and then they get a speed 3 and speed 2, which gives them a lot of flexibility
That's
to
true.
just sacrifice 2 BX models in one squad, maybe one in another, for Han to just get engaged in combat, and then he's not doing a whole
Right,
lot. So
right.
yeah.
That's fair. Okay, so we've hit on a couple, but what would you say are the main weaknesses or flaws of this list?
So the main weakness is if you have a bad early turn on your attack rolls, you don't have the time to recover. So if you
Mm.
go through like in the initial engagement where you're throwing all the dice from the veterans, all the dice from the Mark Twos in a turn, if you don't hit, like if you're not about like within your average range, you're gonna run into problems because that's your opportunity to make your durability it lasts for 1 or 2 turns. After
Ah,
that, you're going to start taking attrition, and as soon as you start taking attrition, if your opponent hasn't also, rebels
yeah.
don't attrition as well as everybody else. Once they actually start taking the wounds, that's the big one that I foresee falling into here with that. And the other kind of weakness, which is along the same lines, is Wookiees. The Wookiee battle force poses you a question. You have 2 turns to respond. After
Yes.
that, you're out of time, and that's really where like those dice need to show up because if they don't, and like you roll, even when you roll averages later, it's like it doesn't matter. They've disrupted everything. They're here.
Yeah.
They've arrived. That's it, right? Um, yeah, like, and that's kind of why like EXD and Wookiees for me are probably like my 2 biggest like
Okay.
matchups where it's hard because it's like if I roll average, should be a great game. Should be an awesome, even like a relatively even matchup. A lot of it comes down to the decisions we make. If the dice aren't like deciding to be average for that initial engagement turn, for either side, it kind of falls over very quickly.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay. That makes sense. What would you say is your fondest moment of in a game of Legion?
Okay, so my fondest moment in a game of Legion, uh, it's happened only a couple of times. So, but like my fondest moment is winning the game as a rebel player with like
Mhm.
1 or 2 models left on the table, but they're holding
Oh,
3 boxes.
yeah.
Like, like the amount of games I've won with Jin Urso standing triumphantly with like 6 suppression and 3 recover boxes, and she's just like,
Oh,
"I got this." It's it's a
oh,
feeling you can't
jeez.
shake.
Yeah.
It's a feeling you can't shake. It's wonderful. It feels great, and it leads to great storytelling. Like that's my fondest memory of it. And these are like pickup games. It doesn't need to be competitive. It's a
Yeah.
great time because those are good stories.
Okay. Okay. Definitely very thematic for the Rebels.
Yeah,
Scraping
one
by.
hundred percent. Yeah,
All right. How about your fondest or most memorable out of game moment, like in the Legion community?
yeah, for sure. So my fondest kind of moments. it's not one specific one, but my fondest ones typically are when I go to events and I meet new players that have either traveled a long way or maybe it's somebody's first event and just hearing their experience in the game and like constantly hearing about the community of Legion at large being a very welcoming place, especially if they're like more experienced wargamers that come from other gaming systems
Yeah.
and they come with that breath of fresh air of being surprised about how welcoming the Legion community is. Like that's probably the best thing to hear when you go to an event, whether you're running it, whether you're just participating. It's like, yeah, it's a good time. Thanks for coming, kind of thing. Like
Yeah.
I hope everyone has that feeling every time they go, right?
I
Like, and
do hear
that's
that
kind
a
of
lot.
yeah, yeah.
That is true. Very true. Um, okay, so back to your list. What kind of list do you want to play against?
So this list in particular, I would love to face double dark troopers. As weird as it sounds, I've
No,
got a
that's
grudge
not
match.
weird, I don't think, because they're gonna run at you.
Yeah,
You get to ignore
they're gonna run
cover.
it.
You have
Yeah,
impact.
I have plenty of impact and I have plenty of critical. I
Yeah.
think I'm ready to, fight him out. So that's just one of the version of lists I like to face. A lot of Empire in general, to be honest. I just feel like the matchup is pretty strong. Um, the I'm trying to think. I'm excited to play against the 14 activation Ewok list because I think it
Okay.
creates an interesting like turn zero scenario because certain things in both of our objective decks are better or worse.
Hmm.
And like I tend to run my FDs with the suppression gun. So suppression is a
Okay.
problem for the Ewok player, even if I'm
Yeah.
not removing as many models as someone that might ignore cover and all that kind of stuff. So, and they're at 14x that are all very mobile. I'm at 11 with only 9 mobile activations, but because the FDs apply so much suppression, you can still make them contribute in the fight
Right.
from the beginning. So it's an interesting like back and forth. And it's always table dependent every time I've looked at it. And it's always very much like turn zero deployment matters more than mission a lot more in this particular matchup. So it's just a very interesting one.
Okay. Okay. Um, and we kind of mentioned two of the lists you don't want to play against. We mentioned
Yeah.
Wookiees and EXD. Are there
Yeah.
any others that you're particularly
Uh,
not fond of?
Wookiees and EXD are would be the highest too.
Okay.
Wookiees asks you a question and you have to respond.
I
Like
love
he
that
just
phrasing.
asks
Yeah.
it. Yeah, like it asks the question. Can you deal with my Wookiee wounds as they charge forward at you?
It's like
And some
79
games the
wounds or
list.
something.
Yeah, some games the dice are like, "Yep, you got it today." Some days definitely not. And then EXD, it's the repair bots scenario within EXD that just
Hmm.
how many repair bots they can fit with the BXs to keep everything up. It's like facing a mirror match, except for they roll red saves on some models, and rebels never
Yeah.
roll red saves, and
Yeah.
that's where it feels like very weird in this matchup. Of like, I can attrition them quick, but they're still
Right.
bringing them back. They're still
Right.
bringing them back for a while, so it's an interesting one.
Okay. How do you feel against Blizzard Force and the Republic gun lines?
So the Republic Online's, in particular, it'll come down to the mission and the table a lot of the time.
Okay.
Um, in my experience, they have difficulty causing attrition quickly against my list without exposing them to the same amount of firepower back. Like
Right.
in this, a lot of the time, Republic gun lines are range 3 with a little bit of range 5 poke. In the Anakin version, you've got a little bit of range 4.
Hmm.
Other than my Mark 2s, everything is range 4 plus as far as the threat range, right?
Right.
And then so they have to get peppered with fire if they want to bring all their firepower to bear. If they want to play the range gunline fight, they've got 3 range 5 guns maybe. I've got a bunch of range 4, a bunch of range 5. If the
Right.
board and the mission allow for it, it means that they don't get to castle as much as they would against a list that's coming at them because we're both going to play this poking game.
So what
And
objectives do
like,
you like
I
with
like key
this?
positions against it.
Okay.
Unironically, I like key positions. I like, depending on the deployment, hostage can be an interesting conundrum. That's how I won my World Open. Like my final game was against a Yoda Pad my list on hostage. It was my
Wow.
hostage. Yeah, we played hemmed in. I'm not gonna. I mean,
What color?
you
What
can.
color were you?
What? I
What
was gold.
color?
It was blue.
You okay?
Blue.
Yeah, I mean that's
I was
great.
blue and hemmed in, and you can do some creative things with emplacement troopers. Let's just put it that way when it comes to
Yeah,
movement.
yeah.
And that is caught my opponent by surprise. They were not prepared for it, for what it could do, and like the board helped, all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, all I had to do was slow them down for a turn, and it's
Uh-huh.
because I slowed them down, they couldn't castle. They couldn't do
Huh.
their like bring a guy back because, and this was partially the board. It's how I was okay with playing hostage. I could have killed
Okay.
hostage to something else, but I was like, I
Right.
think I can play hostage if we're on hemmed in on this board
Right.
because the decision tree for him would be: do I not get a lot of great line of sight blockers, or do I deploy outside of range of my hostage to do the really awesome trick of just
Yeah, the
like
double guidance.
duh, the
Yeah.
double guidance?
Hmm.
Yoda could have done it. Yoda would have been exposed to fire to do it. That's really the whole thing. It's
Gotcha.
like, well, I'm happy to make that trade, right? Like
Yeah.
that's a trade I'm willing to make, and that's kind of the question that
230
evokes from.
points. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Which he was very surprised because I think he definitely expected me to be like, he's like, oh, hostage, I'll be fine, and then yeah. Anyways, it was a really awesome game, great learning game overall, and it was still quite
Okay.
close, right? Like he
Yeah.
still ended up getting his hostage back there. I just won on kill points, but
Okay.
it was
Yeah, yeah.
because I got ahead early on kill points because he had to come out to save his hostage, and that's really where it became this fight of much more even gunfight. I'd say it was good.
Okay. Um, very cool. What about Blizzard? I know there's not as many Blizzards out there anymore, but I think Blizzard's still
Yeah,
strong.
yeah. I don't think Blizzard ever stopped being good. I
Right.
think it is still like it's still very strong. I think the major thing that Blizzard has going against it at the moment is the higher activation counts can punish it. Because if you're
Okay.
running the Vader version, you're at 9, right?
Uh-huh.
And if you're not running the Vader version, you're at 10 with an ATST and 4 bikes, which I think that's probably the better version these days. But into some other things in the meta, bikes get punished. Like experimental droids, I think are very good in the Blizzard. Like flat out, I think they win because reinforcement on BX droids, they eat bikes for breakfast.
Oh, right. Right.
Yeah, like the ability to kill bikes early, very strong. So, and at the same time, I think people that were playing Blizzard a lot have probably gotten a bit bored of it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, they were top dog for a while,
Took him a
and
year
there
and a
was
half,
nothing.
right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It took them a year and a half, and it could be completely wrong. Could show up at Worlds, and there's like 70% Blizzard players. But I think as well that kind of goes with it is that losing the Vader version that was 10 activations with a very high bid
Okay.
really pushes them to be like, okay, well, against the clone gunline army, right? Well, the clone gunline can be quite durable. But when it's 9 acts versus 8 acts with Yoda, the activation advantage isn't really there. And if your
Hmm.
bikes want to contribute in the gunfight, they're gonna die because
Yeah.
guidance and shot, right? Like
Yeah.
that's so a lot of their big, just like really strong matchups disappear behind the activation loss in that version. And the ATST version against clones, again, if the clones are bringing 2 RPSs, like the ATST will go down eventually. And
Yeah.
then the bikes are in the same problem. And Blizzard is a list that needs to fight quickly if it's going to have a fight, or just win on the mission. And most of those lists can win on the mission against Blizzard in a fair fight now.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Let's see. Are there any individual players that you would like to avoid or play against?
I mean, my track record, let's think. I don't think there's anyone I want to avoid in general when it comes to Legion players. At Worlds, realistically, I'm going to have a good time and play
Yeah.
Legion and play at a
Yeah.
high level. So I like to play against other strong players through the way through. Like that's kind of the idea. There's no one in particular other than, or I guess the number one thing I'd like to avoid in round one is playing someone from my local scene. That's it.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
like team kills are going to happen at some point. I'd rather it not be round one because there's a lot
Yeah.
of pressure there. Yeah, but when it's like for me, it's I'd like to play against anyone who I think is better than me at Legion because you can learn
Okay.
a lot and have a good time. And
Absolutely.
ultimately, I want to enjoy playing the game more than I want to win it. I know that sounds weird to say going to Worlds, but for me, the game is about having fun while playing competitively. Both
Right,
those things are
right,
important.
right. No, I think that's a good, healthy outlook on it, though, and I definitely agree with you there. Okay. Wrapping up here, what is a fun fact about you that others might not know?
This is the one question that I don't have a grit like a prepared
That's all
answer
right.
for
That's all right.
because it's not one I've ever like really been asked. I mean, like, hmm. So even though so fun fact, it's about Legion. So fun fact about me, a lot of people wouldn't know this, but when I started, I was going to be playing primarily Empire. When I
Oh,
started the game, but I split basically in my local scene. Everybody was playing Empire when we started, so I
yeah.
said, "Well, one of us better play a Rebel." So I was like, "All right, well, I'll be the Rebel player," and it just kind of stuck after that. Like that's really it.
Join the good
I
fight.
Yeah, I joined the good fight because nobody else would, and I didn't want to do Stormtrooper versus Stormtrooper for weeks on end.
Right. Right.
Yeah, so like that's probably an interesting fact. I play Rebels not because they were my first pick; they definitely are now.
Yeah.
But
Well, and
that's more to.
you're doing well with them too, which is
I'm doing well with them, and that's the thing that changed, right? Like I was like, oh,
yeah,
I kind of like this. I realized I really enjoyed the style, and so it was a lot of fun.
very cool. Not easy to do as a rebel player these days. So good
it,
on you.
it's tough. It's tough to stay true. Let's put it that way. You look at everybody else's toys and you go, "That's really
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, you need
That's really
blinders and
cool."
just not look at theirs. Just like, oh, this is fine.
We can call the Wookiee Battle Force rebels, right? Right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
In
yeah,
spirit,
yeah.
they're rebels.
In spirit, it's a rebel army, right? Yeah.
All right. Well, do you have any local store or club that you want to shout out?
No store or club in particular. I'll
Okay.
shout out to just like the Ontario, the province of Ontario's Legion community at large. They're a great group of folks that I love seeing at events. We've got a Discord that I'm pretty active in with them, and we just talk about the game, enjoy it in all its complexities, as well as just have a good time, like just talking about Star Wars. So it's great.
It's good to hear. Good to hear. Well, thank you very much for your time. We hope you have success and take those rebels to the top at Worlds.
Thanks, John. Appreciate it.
That's no move.